Hello and welcome to another Forgotten Fairy Tale, a very special series for sharing forgotten fairy tales and correcting some fairy tale versions. 'Tis I, your unforgettable host, Mockingjay. Today we'll be sharing the story of the grasshopper and the ant. I know, you've heard this like a gazillion times. But do you know the full version of the story has not been properly told? I'm going to share with you the full, unadulterated version of the grasshopper and the ant. Before I start the story, you might want to get yourself a snack. What is story time without snack time? I don't know which Mocking loves more, story time or snack time. Well, when Mocking goes to tie his shoes, he knows he loves snack time more than story time every time. I will be chasing down a seaweed protein bar with a glass of ice cold soy milk. What is soy? It's a bean. And how do you get milk from a bean? With very tiny hands. You may be asking yourself, why is Mocking drinking milk from a bean? Allow me to explain. The real milk, the got milk, comes from cows. And it has been reported that cows fart, and these farts are heating up the world. Now, I don't know if it's the actual cow gas that's causing the earth to heat up, or if the cows are secretly practicing the art of flatus ignitus, the art of lighting one's farts, which would explain that weird glow coming from Farmer Paul's fields. The prevailing thought is, cows' farts are going to result in the world getting so hot that all the snowflakes will melt and all living creatures will be barbecued. Which, by the way, is how Mocking takes his cow. If we're going to start going around and getting rid of everything and everybody that farts, Mocking will have to quit going to Taco Bell. And with my soy milk, I'm having a seaweed bar. Very healthy, lots of vitamins and minerals and iodine. Yes, iodine, like you put on your open cuts. The best thing about these seaweed bars is when I first open it, I swear I can smell the ocean. Otherwise, it's a very expensive, sustainable, and tasteless treat. Sold in a plastic wrapper. Mocking needs a moment. Seaweed bars, expensive seaweed bars. Bars made from weeds from the sea. Weed bars. Hey, the next time Mocking needs a sustainable snack, I can just walk out in my backyard and chow down on a handful of dandelions. That will save some green, as in cash. Got your snacks? Now get comfortable. And now for the full, unadulterated version of the grasshopper and the ant. A very fun story with a moral, or not. Do you know what a moral is? It's a point in the story, a behavior or a belief the writer wants you to understand and maybe incorporate into your life. At the end of the story, I will ask you what the moral of the story is, so pay attention. The Mockingjay Show and Unforgettable Fairy Tales presents the full, unadulterated version of The Grasshopper and the Ant. Hidden in the tall grass of an unmowed yard, there's this grasshopper, and his name is Gary. Yep, Gary the grasshopper. Well, hello there, and nice to meet ya. Fun little guy who likes to stay out all night singing and dancing and playing his fiddle and sleeping in until noon. Gary, like all grasshoppers, chews tobacco. We call it tobacco, but grasshoppers say tobacco. And if you've ever picked up a grasshopper, you know the first thing they do is they spit tobacco in your hand. Ugh, gross. Back to the story. Spring and summer had just changed places, and it is a beautiful afternoon, and we find Gary under some daisies, tuning his fiddle. Suddenly, Gary hears something weird, a kind of grunting noise coming from the other side of the daisies. And to Gary's surprise, he sees an ant grunting and panting, carrying a breadcrumb the size of an SUV. Well, hello there, little ant. What's your name and where you going with such a heavy load on such a wonderful day?
Well, I am Adrian, and who are you?
Well, you may have heard of me. I'm Gary, Gary the Grasshopper, and I am known for playing the meanest fiddle this side of the fence. Allow me to play a lick or two for you.
Well, nice to meet you, Gary. I do have time for one song, and then I need to get back to work.
Adrian put down her breadcrumb and listened to Gary play a song, a real toe tapper. At the end of the song, Adrian said,
"Ooh, that was terrific. It was really nice to meet you, Gary. Now I must be getting back to work."
"Well, what's the hurry, Adrian? It's such a nice day just for hanging out."
"I must keep working. Summer is for getting ready for winter."
"Whoa, Adrian, you are way too serious. There's plenty of time to get ready for winter."
"Goodbye, Gary."
And with that, Adrian hoisted up her gigantic breadcrumb and headed off to the hive. And Gary rosined up his bow and started to get after it. Do you know all worker ants are female? They are sterile females working to support the queen and the hive. The queen is the only ant allowed to have sex, thus the only ant allowed to have babies. The male ants are just sex objects. Once the queen has sexual intercourse with a male, she kicks his thorax to the curb and he dies. Think about that, playa. Let's get back to the story. The 4th of July has come and gone with picnics and glow sticks. And here comes Adrian, and she's feeling really pretty good about herself. She has found a piece of hamburger, and she is using all of her might to drag it back to the hive.
"Wow, this is going to be a really nice treat this winter. Plus, every cow that's eaten is one less cow farting. Yep, saving the world one cow at a time."
And that thought put a little spring into Adrian's step. And who do you think she ran into? Yep, it's Gary the Grasshopper, and he was playing his fiddle. "Well, hello there, Adrian. I'm fiddling, and you are not singing and dancing. You're working too hard. Be cool, relax. It's way too nice of a day to waste it on work."
"I must keep working. There'll be plenty of time in the winter where we ants will be warm and cozy in our hive and have plenty to eat, and time to sing and dance. So today, work. Tomorrow, winter."
Whoa, winter is so far off. You're way overthinking this thing. And besides, winter up here, they ain't so bad.
"The Farmer's Almanac is calling for a very long and cold winter with heavier than normal snow accumulation."
Oh, pshaw. The Farmer's Almanac. You got to be kidding me. Oh, you silly little ant. And with that, Adrian shook her head and hefted up her gigantic beef treat and headed back to the hive. Adrian went out again the following week and found a raisin, and it is taking everything she's got to drag that raisin behind her. It's summer, and it's a very hot day. The weight of the raisin and the heat of the sun is starting to make Adrian sweat. Wait, do ants sweat? I don't know. Can someone Google that and put the answer in the notes down below? And who does Adrian run into? Yep, it's Gary. And he is sleeping under some strange 5-leaf plant. All the grunting and sweating Adrian is doing wakes Gary. "Whoa, hey, whoa, hey, what's going on here? Whoa. Oh, it's you, Adrian. What do you got there? Oh, it's a raisin, and my, it's a whopper. Adrian, why are you working so hard? Today is so hot. Why don't you come over here and sit with me under the shade of this wonderful leaf? I can play something soft and easy, and you can lay down your heavy load and take a well-deserved nap."
"There'll be plenty of time for napping when winter comes. But now I need to keep preparing for the coming of winter. Gary, you really should be doing the same."
No. That's way too hot today. Supposed to be cooler tomorrow. But now is the time for napping. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to my napping. Please leave quietly." And with that, Adrian shook her head and she just couldn't understand Gary's nonchalant attitude towards the future. She picked up her raisin and headed back to the hive. These little encounters repeated all summer long. Adrian working and Gary playing. Adrian working, Gary fiddling. Adrian working, Gary sleeping. Adrian working, Gary chewing tobacco. I think you got the point. Then one day, the school buses began to hold up traffic again, and their orange flashing lights became a warning that fall is coming. And here comes Adrian, and she is struggling with something she has never seen before. The only thing she can figure out about this treat is that it smells like the ocean, and it's kind of tasteless. And again, she runs into Gary. Of course she runs into Gary. This is a story about Adrian and Gary. And that's what they do. And what is Gary doing? He's playing his fiddle and dancing about. Well, hello there, little Adrian. Why don't you put down your load and dance with me for a while? I'm just killing the tunes today. Oh, and Gary was killing the tunes. And Adrian found herself shaking her thorax. She so wanted to stop and dance, but her thoughts of the coming of winter and her responsibility to the hive stopped her.
There'll be plenty of time for dancing and killing it when winter comes. Please, Gary, please, 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 please start getting ready for winter. It'll be here any day.
Oh, pshaw, maybe tomorrow. Right now I can't. I'm really killing it. And he went back to playing the fiddle and dancing about. And Adrian headed back to the hive with the scent of the ocean. As from the beginning of time, spring gives way to summer, summer bows out to fall, and fall's color run white. And here comes winter. Oh, mean old winter. And it starts to get cold. The trees stand bare and tongues start sticking to poles. With this, the ants declare that winter is here. No more work till spring, and now they can enjoy the fruits of their labor. The ants ask Adrian to close the door to keep winter from sneaking in. As Adrian was about to close the door, she spots Gary.
Gary! 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 Hey, Gary!
But he did not wave back. Gary is not moving. He's looking very odd. He's no longer his handsome green, but blue. Adrian knew right away Gary was freezing to death. She ran down and petitioned the queen and the other ants to let Gary spend the winter with them.
We got plenty to share, and Gary will play his fiddle so we can sing and dance all winter long. Can he spend the winter with us? Please, 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 please.
And the queen said, if Gary is your friend and he will play his fiddle so we can sing and dance all winter, he may come in. And with that, Adrian ran out into the cold and dragged Gary into the hive. And after a while, Gary slowly began to move, and his handsome green color returned. And it was not too long after Gary started to play his fiddle and ants began to eat and sing and dance. They are starting to enjoy the fruits of the ants' summer's work and sacrifice. Wow, isn't that so nice of the ants to share what they have worked for, sacrificed for, and devoted their whole summer to? Sharing it with Gary the grasshopper, who all summer stayed up late, slept in, played his fiddle, and napped, and chewed tobacco. Wait a minute. Gary's life in the ant hive will not change all that much. Just like summer, Gary gets to eat, sleep in, play his fiddle, and chew tobacco. His hardest task will be to get in the mill line every day until spring comes, when he can go back outside, stay up late, play his fiddle, take naps, chew tobacco. He is one lucky grasshopper. Here's the point where most storytellers stop, but not mocking. There is more to this story. Once again, the Farmer's Almanac was right. The winter ended up being very long and cold. In fact, this winter set records for the amount of days below zero and for the accumulation of snow. Winter's lasting so long, the ants begin to be concerned that they might run out of food. Yet, they share with Gary the grasshopper, who, not surprisingly, is always the first in line at mealtime. To get a better handle of the supplies, Adrian took inventory of what the ants had left in their pantry. And it is not looking good. In order to make sure they would have enough food to make it through till spring, the ants start to cut down on the size of portions at meal times. One day after Gary wolfed down his reduced portion, he was still hungry. So he walked up to the food handlers and stuck out his bowl and said, "Please, sir, I want some more." Adrian, seeing what was happening, took Gary aside and said,
Gary, we are starting to get very concerned about the food stores. This winter has been so long and cold, and there is no break in sight. We all need to sacrifice for the hive. We all need to tighten our belts.
Wait, did Adrian just say tighten our belts? Does that mean ants have belts? Does that mean ants have pants? Ants and pants? Not ants in my pants, but pants and ants. Pants and ants. No. Pants on ants. Pants on ants. What does that look like? How many legs do these ant pants have? 2, 4, 6? Are they capri, boot cut, straight legged, thorax huggers, button flies? Well, they're all sterile females, so I guess the fly is not a big deal for them. They could just wear those stretchy leggy things, which have the elastic waistbands. Which, oddly enough, is the kind of waistband Mocking wears. Mocking needs a pair of pants that are flexible. My fat is in a constant state of change. One day it's in my belly, then it moves to my butt. I have found fat in my feet. And Miss Debbie Ann, the love of my life, notices it when it's in my head. So having pants with a flexible waistband is a good thing for Mocking. Where are we? Oh yeah. The ants just found out they may not have enough food to make it till spring, and Adrian is talking to Gary.
When spring arrives, we'll be able to go back to gathering food, but for now, please be patient.
But Gary was hungry, and getting hungrier. Well, I don't think I have enough energy to play the fiddle. If they don't give me more food, then I will not play my fiddle for them mean old ants. And with that, the hive became a sadder place. Food scarce, no music for singing and dancing. And one morning when Gary was admiring himself in the mirror, he was shocked at what he saw. Well, I've become nothing but ectoskeleton and wings. I have lost my boyish vigor. And I don't even have any tobacco to spit. This ain't right. Gary was becoming a whiner. So sad. The next morning, while Gary was watching his favorite TV show, he saw an advertisement for the Goldwater Law Group. And Gary called the Goldwater Law Group and told them his story about how he was not getting enough to eat and the ants are being so mean to him, and asked the Goldwater Law Group, "Well, can you help a hungry hopper out?" Well, the Goldwater Group put their bestest lawyers on the case. They filed writs and wrote and asked for discovery, subpoenaed records, questioned all the ants. When the court day came, their legal team went to work with a vengeance. They argued the ants had no legal right to withhold food from Gary, and that the ants were discriminating against Gary because he was born a grasshopper. The ants presented their defense and argued they took Gary in at the beginning of winter and have been taking care of him ever since. They showed graphs and charts of food consumption and finalized their defense with the fact that it has been a very long and cold winter and they could not and cannot go out to hunt and gather. At the trial's end, the judge banged the gavel and ruled in favor of Gary, demanding the ants give Gary his full portion. The judge went on to say, "If Gary wants seconds, you are hereby ordered to give him seconds and even thirds." Adrian was shocked.
What the hell happen?
Well, the youth of spring was not strong enough to push old man winter down the road. The world remained in a blanket of white, and cars continued to slip into the ditch. And Adrian and the ants still could not go out and hunt and gather. And between you and me, I think Adrian was starting to regret eating that stale hamburger. And who could have guessed that ants could get any skinnier? But not Gary. Gary was ordering his court-ordered 4-course meals. Gary started to put back on his weight. My, he was starting to look really good. And even though Gary was getting well fed, he told himself in the mirror, "Well, I'm looking good, but I will never play the fiddle again for those mean old ants, that's for sure." Come every mealtime, Gary was the first one in the buffet line, taking as much as he wanted. He was even caught stuffing bits of the ocean in his pockets. But Adrian and the other ants survived on smaller and smaller portions. Then one day, Gary came down for his court-ordered supper. And just as the judge ordered, he is the first in line. But this day, the cafeteria's doors were locked. "Well, this is highly unusual." Yeah, it's mealtime." Waiting for the doors to open started to make Gary pretty excited. He licked his lips and said, "Well, they must be making something very special for me today. Yum!" Gary's mouth started to water, but the doors to the cafeteria, they did not open. Gary started to get a little irritated. "Well, how dare they? They can't do this to me." And yelling at the doors, Gary said, "Let me remind you, I have a court order that I be fed whenever I wants and as much as I wants, and I wants to eat now. Now you mean old doors, you open up." Well, doors have hinges and doors have knobs, but doors do not have ears. They remained closed. Gary's face turned beet red with anger, and he began pounding on the doors, demanding they open, and he be fed right now. Gary even used some very offensive words, but the doors did not budge. Gary became beside himself with anger. He threw himself against the doors and cried and pounded with all 6 legs, and he rolled around, and then the tears began to flow. Poor Gary wore himself out with all that pounding and yelling, and finally giving up, he crumpled to the floor crying. Oh, such a poor, hungry Hopper. No, I don't know if it's the sound of Gary's whimpering or if the doors were moved by Gary's tears. But finally, these mean old doors, these mean old cafeteria doors began to slowly open. Gary wiped the tears from his eyes and started to smile when he saw the doors of the cafeteria were opening. And Gary hopped up with an excitement and let out a big old yip. And Gary ran straight into the kitchen. And then Adrian and the ants ate Gary the grasshopper.
Yum!
Well, isn't the full version of the story better? Which would you rather be, an ant or a grasshopper? Is there a moral to the story? If so, what would that be? Share it in the notes below. And don't forget to come back and bring your friends and join me, Mocking Ray, for another episode of Forgotten Fairy Tales. I wish I could tell you what the name of the next episode is, but I have forgotten.